Meanwhile, Aldi is removing more ingredients from its private label products. The grocer announcing it's cutting 44 of them by December of 2027.
Before you make your next Aldi run in 2026, stop. Things are changing, and most shoppers have no idea until they're standing in the checkout line, confused. From pricing shifts to policy changes nobody announced loudly, we found 15 things every regular Aldi shopper needs to know right now. The last number might change how you shop there forever. Number 15. The cart quarter trick. Nobody warns you. About you already know the drill. No quarter, no cart. But heading into 2026, more locations are quietly rolling out digital cart unlockers alongside the classic coin slot. And if you show up expecting only the old system, you might find yourself standing in the parking lot with nothing but pocket lint. Some shoppers have started keeping a spare quarter taped inside their car for exactly this reason, because the old system isn't disappearing everywhere at once. It is a patchwork rollout, meaning your usual store might work completely differently than the one across town. Even more confusing, a few pilot locations testing the digital unlocker have been known to have technical hiccups during their first few weeks live, leaving shoppers stuck fumbling with an app that won't connect while a line forms behind them at the cart corral. Until the rollout stabilizes, the safest bet is still to carry a physical quarter as a backup no matter which store you're headed to. That inconsistency from store to store is becoming the theme of this entire year, and it gets even more noticeable the moment you actually step through the door, which is exactly what we're getting into in reason number 14. Employees at locations still running the coin-only system say the number of shoppers who walk up empty-handed has actually gone up rather than down, since so many people have started assuming every store has already switched over. A handful of regional divisions have also started testing key fob-style cart releases tied to loyalty accounts, which is yet another variation shoppers might stumble into depending entirely on which part of the country they happen to be shopping in. Number 14. Longer lines during specific peak hours. Aldi's entire staffing model depends on a tiny cross-trained crew moving fast. That works beautifully most of the day, but as more shoppers discover the savings and foot traffic climbs into 2026, certain peak windows, especially weekend mornings and the hour right after work lets out, are starting to show real bottlenecks. Unlike a traditional supermarket that can throw open a dozen extra registers during a rush, Aldi's skeleton crew has a hard ceiling on how many lanes it can staff at once. When that ceiling gets hit during a genuinely busy stretch, the line can back up fast, and there's no self-checkout overflow to absorb the extra bodies. Employees are doing everything they can to keep pace, often sprinting between stocking duties and an open register the moment a line starts to form, but there's only so much a crew of 3 or 4 people can physically manage at once. If you know your local store's specific rush windows, planning around them can save you a genuinely frustrating wait. A few store managers have started posting informal rush hour windows near the entrance, a small courtesy that lets regulars plan their trip around the worst of the congestion. If you don't want to get caught off guard by any of these changes, hit subscribe right now, because the next 13 reasons only get more useful from here. If long lines are your biggest pet peeve, this next warning is going to matter even more to you, because it involves an aisle specifically designed to make you slow down and linger, which we're covering in reason number 13. Number 13. The Aldi Finds aisle is a bigger trap than ever. The rotating aisle of shame has always been dangerous for your wallet, but heading into 2026 it has become genuinely unpredictable. Items are selling out faster than ever, sometimes within hours of hitting the floor, as more shoppers have learned to treat Wednesday restocks like a countdown event. That scarcity used to feel like a fun bonus. Now it's becoming a legitimate budgeting hazard. Shoppers report walking in for milk and eggs, and walking out having spent an extra $60 or $70 on a random kitchen gadget or a patio heater they didn't know they needed until it was sitting right in front of them. Financial advisors have actually started flagging scarcity-driven impulse aisles like this one, specifically in budgeting advice for grocery shoppers, recommending a firm rule: walk past it on the way in, and only circle back if there's genuinely still cash left in your budget on the way out. Given how fast these items disappear now, that discipline is harder to hold on to than it sounds. Some shoppers have taken to setting a hard cash limit specifically for this aisle before they even walk in the door, treating it almost like a separate mini-budget from the rest of the grocery trip. It sounds excessive until you've actually stood in front of a discounted power tool set you weren't planning to buy, with a small crowd of equally tempted shoppers closing in around the display. Employees have quietly noted that the busiest finds displays now tend to sell out well before the store even hits its typical midday rush. If scarcity marketing can do that much damage to your grocery budget, imagine what happens when you show up completely unprepared for how you're expected to carry your groceries out the door. Which brings us to the reason in the next number. Number 12. Bring your own bags or pay for it. First time. Aldi shoppers get caught by this every single time. There is no complimentary bagging, and in more and more regions heading into 2026, plastic bags aren't even offered for purchase anymore due to expanding local bag bans, leaving you stuck buying a reusable one at checkout if you forgot yours. Experienced shoppers keep a stash of bags in the trunk permanently for exactly this reason. If you're new, or if you're visiting an Aldi outside your usual region for the first time, do not assume the rules from your home store apply everywhere. It's also worth remembering that Aldi's checkout process moves fast, specifically because bagging happens away from the register, at a separate counter along the wall. Showing up without a bag plan doesn't just cost you a purchase. It can genuinely slow down the entire line behind you while you scramble to figure out how you're getting everything to your car. A handful of regions have gone even further, phasing out paper bags at checkout as well, which means the safest habit going forward is simply never leaving home without something to carry your groceries in. Bags are a small annoyance compared to what's happening at the register itself, where a payment change is quietly catching plenty of regular shoppers off guard. And that's exactly where we're headed in reason number 11. Number 11. Some registers are limiting large cash transactions. Cash is still accepted at Aldi, but a growing number of locations are tightening how much cash a single transaction can involve, particularly for large bills, as part of a broader industry push toward faster, card-first checkout lanes. This matters most if you're the type of shopper who does one big monthly stock-up trip and pays entirely in cash. Showing up with a fat stack of 20s for a $200 cart could mean an awkward, slower transaction than you're used to, working directly against the lightning-fast checkout Aldi built its whole reputation on. The shift makes sense from an operations standpoint. Counting large amounts of cash manually slows down exactly the scan rate metric Aldi cashiers are measured against, and it introduces a cash handling risk that card transactions simply don't carry. Still, if cash is your preferred payment method, it's worth calling ahead to your specific location before planning a large purchase around it. Some regulars have simply switched to a debit or credit card for their bigger stock-up runs, and kept cash reserved only for smaller, quicker trips. Payment friction is annoying, but it's nothing compared to a quieter risk that's been growing across the entire grocery industry, one that Aldi shoppers specifically need to stay ahead of heading into 2026, and that's exactly what we're covering in reason number 10. Number 10. Product recall alerts matter more than ever. Because Aldi's private label model concentrates such enormous purchasing volume into a small handful of suppliers, a single contamination or labeling issue at one factory can ripple across thousands of stores nationwide almost instantly. That's the trade-off of the exact efficiency that makes Aldi's prices so low in the first place. Heading into 2026, food safety experts are increasingly recommending that shoppers who rely heavily on private label products sign up directly for recall notifications rather than assuming they'll simply hear about it through the news. A recall on a widely distributed private label item can move faster than a headline does. The upside is that Aldi's tight cross-docked supply chain also means recalls tend to get resolved and pulled from shelves faster than at a traditional grocery chain, juggling dozens of separate brand relationships. The speed that makes the whole system efficient works in your favor here too, but only if you actually know a recall happened in the first place. It's worth building this into your routine now, rather than waiting for something to go wrong. A recall alert sign-up takes a couple of minutes, and it's the kind of thing you genuinely won't think about again until the one time it actually matters, at which point you'll be glad you set it up months earlier. Many shoppers now keep the recall sign-up page bookmarked right alongside their weekly shopping list, so the two habits reinforce each other instead of competing for attention. Staying alert to recalls is one thing, but staying alert to your favorite product quietly changing without any recall at all is a completely different problem, and it's happening more than most shoppers realize, which is exactly what we're exposing in reason number 9. Number 9. Your favorite product might taste different overnight. Because Aldi's supplier contracts are based entirely on performance and price, a factory producing your favorite private label item can lose that contract to a competitor at any time. And a new supplier means a new recipe, even if the packaging looks identical on the shelf. Shoppers have reported grabbing a familiar boxer jar only to discover the taste or texture had quietly shifted, with zero warning printed anywhere on the label. It's the flip side of Aldi's ruthless supplier standards. The same system that guarantees quality also guarantees change whenever a better deal comes along. Online communities built around Aldi products have actually gotten good at spotting these shifts early, comparing notes on subtle packaging clues like a slightly different UPC code or a new manufacturing plant code printed near the barcode. If a product you love unexpectedly tastes off, checking those forms before assuming something's wrong with the item itself is often the fastest way to get an answer. Taste and texture shifts like this rarely come with any kind of announcement, so the only real defense is paying closer attention the next time you unwrap something familiar. That kind of quiet, unannounced change is exactly the theme running through the next warning too, and it's one a lot of loyal shoppers have already been caught off guard by. Number 8. Store hours are shifting at more locations than you'd expect. Traditional supermarkets rarely change their hours. Aldi, on the other hand, has been quietly adjusting operating hours at a growing number of locations heading into 2026, in some cases closing 30 minutes to an hour earlier than shoppers are used to, in order to protect the labor model that keeps its skeleton crew from burning out. If you've built a habit of showing up right before closing to grab a quick dinner ingredient, this is exactly the kind of change that can leave you standing outside a dark storefront. Always double-check your specific location's current hours before making a last-minute run, because assuming your store still keeps the same schedule it did a year ago is a mistake more shoppers are making than you'd think. The tighter closing window also means the last hour of the day tends to feel rushed, with staff focused on closing procedures rather than a leisurely shopping pace. If you're the type who likes to browse the Aldi Finds aisle slowly, going earlier in the day is going to be a noticeably better experience than squeezing in a trip right before the doors lock. Right now is also the perfect time to hit like and share this video with anyone in your life who does their grocery runs late at night, because getting stuck outside a closed store is the kind of thing that's a lot funnier watching happen to someone else. Calling the store directly before a late trip only takes a moment and can save you an entirely wasted drive. Hours changing without much warning is frustrating enough on its own, but it's a small taste of a bigger pattern showing up across the return counter too, which is exactly what we're covering in reason in the next number. Number 7. The double guarantee has fine print. You need to know Aldi's famous double guarantee, full refund and full replacement. If you're not satisfied, is still one of the most generous return policies in grocery retail. But heading into 2026, more locations are tightening how the policy applies to certain bulk and seasonal items, particularly anything purchased through the Aldi Finds aisle. The core promise hasn't disappeared, but shoppers assuming it covers absolutely everything, no matter what, are occasionally getting an unwelcome surprise at the customer service counter. It's worth asking an employee directly about any exceptions before you rely on the policy for a big-ticket seasonal purchase. The tightening appears to be aimed specifically at preventing abuse of the scarcity-driven Aldi Finds items, where a customer could theoretically buy a limited seasonal item, use it once, and return it for a full refund and replacement, even though restocking that exact item might not be possible. Everyday grocery items still seem to be covered under the original generous version of the policy. Keeping a receipt handy for a few extra weeks after any bigger purchase is a small habit that makes any conversation at the returns counter go a lot smoother. A policy quietly getting narrower is one kind of change to watch for, but a policy quietly getting introduced for the very first time is a completely different story. And that's exactly what's happening at the checkout lane in select markets, covered next in reason number 6. Number 6. Self-checkout is finally being tested And it's not what you expect. For years, Aldi resisted the self-checkout trend that swept through the rest of the grocery industry, betting that human cashiers were simply faster. Heading into 2026, the company has quietly begun piloting self-checkout lanes in a small number of locations, mostly in dense urban markets where staffing has been harder to maintain. Don't expect the same experience you've had at Walmart or Kroger, though. Early reports suggest these pilot lanes are limited in number, restricted to smaller basket sizes, and still run alongside the traditional staffed lanes rather than replacing them. It's an experiment, not a company-wide shift, at least for now. If you do encounter one of these pilot lanes, don't expect it to move as fast as a trained Aldi cashier. Early testers have noted the kiosks are calibrated conservatively, with extra weight verification checks slowing things down. A sign that Aldi is being deliberately cautious rather than rushing to match the rest of the industry. There's also an unresolved question about how this fits with the company's cart deposit and bagging philosophy. Self-checkout inherently shifts more labor onto the shopper, which lines up neatly with Aldi's overall approach. But it's still unclear whether the pilot lanes will eventually adopt the same aggressive scan rate culture the staffed registers are known for, or whether they'll remain a slower, secondary option reserved for smaller trips. Shoppers who have tried the pilot lanes describe the experience as noticeably calmer than a typical Aldi checkout, even if it isn't quite as fast. Whether that experiment expands or quietly disappears will depend entirely on whether it holds up against the blistering scan rate standards Aldi cashiers are famous for. And that same obsession with speed shows up in a completely different part of the shopping trip too, which we're covering in reason in the next number. Number 5. Seasonal favorites might not come back. This year, Aldi's tight rotating inventory means seasonal and limited-time items have always been a gamble. But heading into 2026, supply chain shifts are making that gamble riskier than usual. A seasonal product that's been a reliable yearly return for a decade can simply vanish permanently if a supplier relationship changes or a taste test doesn't go Aldi's way. If you've built a tradition around a specific seasonal item, whether it's a holiday chocolate, a limited coffee roast, or a Finds aisle classic, don't assume it's guaranteed to reappear. More shoppers than ever are stocking up early and freezing what they can, just in case this is the year it doesn't come back. Aldi's buyers make these decisions based on cold performance data rather than sentiment, so even a genuinely beloved item can quietly disappear if a supplier relationship shifts or the numbers don't justify another order. There's no announcement, no farewell post. It's simply gone from the shelf one week and never comes back. A quick note on your phone the first time you spot a seasonal item back on shelves can make next year's hunt a lot less stressful. Losing a seasonal favorite stings, but it's a small inconvenience compared to a pricing shift that's affecting nearly every category in the store at once. And that's exactly what we need to talk about in reason number 4. Number 4. No loyalty app means no personalized warning about price changes. Traditional grocery chains use their loyalty apps to quietly signal price changes, letting frequent shoppers spot patterns through personalized coupons and targeted deals. Aldi's refusal to build that kind of tracking system, one of the things that makes it so trustworthy, also means there's no personalized heads-up when prices shift on items you buy regularly. Heading into 2026, a handful of categories are seeing real price adjustments due to ingredient and shipping cost pressure across the entire industry, not just at Aldi. Because there's no app pinging you about it, the only way most shoppers notice is by comparing this month's receipt to last month's, which most people simply don't do. This is arguably the trade-off hiding inside Aldi's privacy-first approach. The same refusal to track your purchase history that keeps your data out of a broker's hands also means the company has no easy way, and honestly, no real interest, in personally flagging a price change on your favorite items before you notice it yourself at checkout. It's a genuinely fair trade for most shoppers, but it does mean the burden of staying informed shifts entirely onto you. A traditional supermarket's app might annoy you with notifications, but at least it hands you the information. Aldi hands you the savings instead and expects you to keep your own eyes open. A simple habit of glancing at the receipt total before you leave the parking lot each week is really all it takes to stay ahead of this one. That same lack of built-in warning shows up again in the parking lot itself. in a detail that's easy to overlook until it's already caused you a headache. And that's exactly where we're headed in reason number 3. Number 3. Those tiny parking lots are getting tighter. Aldi's micro-footprint real estate strategy is a huge part of why it can offer such low prices, but that same tiny footprint means tiny parking lots. And as more shoppers discover the savings, some locations are seeing real congestion during peak hours heading into 2026. Unlike a sprawling traditional supermarket lot with hundreds of spaces, a typical Aldi lot might only have a fraction of that capacity. Combine that with more first-time shoppers unfamiliar with the quarter cart system fumbling around near the cart corral, and busy hour parking can turn into a genuine hassle in denser markets. Some urban locations have started experimenting with designated quick trip spots near the entrance for anyone grabbing 5 items or fewer. A small fix aimed at keeping the lot moving during the busiest windows. Whether that idea spreads to more locations will likely depend on how well it actually reduces congestion at the stores testing it first. Shopping during a weekday mid-morning window instead of a weekend afternoon remains one of the simplest ways to avoid the worst of the crowding entirely. If parking congestion is annoying, it's nothing compared to a much bigger structural shift happening to the actual map of Aldi locations across the country, and that's exactly what we're covering in reason number 2. Number 2. Your local store might not be your local store. Much longer. Aldi's aggressive multi-billion-dollar expansion plan is continuing to accelerate into 2026. And part of that growth involves converting, relocating, or even closing individual locations as the company optimizes its national footprint. A store that's been your regular stop for years could quietly become a bigger, updated format nearby, or in rarer cases close altogether if a newer location opens too close by. This isn't happening randomly. Aldi tracks performance data on every single store and reallocates its real estate investment toward the locations and formats that perform best, which means loyalty to a specific building isn't something the company particularly rewards. If your local store is part of an older, smaller format, especially one still using a layout from before Aldi's most recent remodeling wave, it's worth paying attention to any signage, construction activity, or staff comments about upcoming changes. A newer, larger format store is often the sign of a swap coming, and getting caught off guard by a sudden closure is far more disruptive than getting used to a slightly bigger, updated version down the road. Following your store's social media page is a small, easy way to catch any announcement before you show up to a locked door. Before we get to the single biggest warning on this entire list, if you've made it this far, stick around, because reason number 1 is the one that actually affects your wallet the most. Number 1. Prices are adjusting. Across the board, and nobody's announcing it loudly. This is the warning that matters most heading into 2026. Like every grocery retailer, Aldi is not immune to broader cost pressure from ingredient costs, packaging, and transportation, and a noticeable number of categories are seeing incremental price increases this year. The difference is that Aldi has never relied on flashy weekly circulars or app notifications to communicate anything, including price changes, which means most shoppers won't notice until they're already at the register. The good news is that Aldi's fundamental pricing advantage over traditional supermarkets hasn't disappeared. Even with these adjustments, the gap between an Aldi cart and the identical cart at Walmart or Kroger remains significant. But the days of assuming every single item costs exactly what it did last year are over, and shoppers who track their receipts closely are the ones who will notice exactly which categories are shifting and adjust their shopping habits accordingly. The most practical move for 2026 is to start keeping a rough mental baseline, or even a simple note on your phone, of what your usual cart typically costs. That way, when a price does creep up on something you buy every week, you'll catch it within a trip or two instead of months later, giving you the chance to switch to an alternative item or simply factor the change into your budget before it becomes a surprise. Ultimately, none of these 15 warnings mean Aldi has suddenly become a worse place to shop. If anything, most of these changes are the natural growing pains of a discount grocer that's expanding faster than almost anyone else in the industry, absorbing more customers, more locations, and more supply chain pressure than it ever has before. Growth at this scale rarely comes without a few bumps, and staying informed is simply the best way to make sure those bumps don't end up costing you time, money, or a wasted trip. That's the list. 15 warnings. And while none of them should scare you away from your next Aldi run, All of them are worth knowing before you walk through those doors in 2026. Grocery shopping is one of those routines most of us do on autopilot, walking the same aisles in the same order, grabbing the same items without really looking too closely at what's changed. That's exactly why so many of these shifts, the tightened return exceptions, the quiet price adjustments, the shrinking window before closing, manage to slip past even loyal, long-time shoppers. Staying a little more alert on your next few trips is genuinely the easiest way to make sure none of this catches you off guard. Thanks for watching. Click on the next video by your left, where I break down exactly how Aldi's prices stack up against Walmart and Kroger this year. Also, tell me the number that caught you off guard in the comments.